everyone and welcome to a new video. So today's video is going to be a monthly progress log, and it was filmed over the course of August, September, and the very beginning of October, which is why I've titled it a monthly progress log instead of a weekly progress log like I usually do. I've gotten a lot of requests for another one of these videos, so I hope you guys enjoy. But before I get into it, I just want to say that the past couple months haven't been that great for me mental health wise, and my productivity and the things that I've made have definitely suffered because of that. I've still been working, I just haven't been super enthusiastic about my projects, which makes it difficult for me to film them or write about them because I'm just not in the right headspace. And unfortunately, when I was feeling really productive and enthusiastic, I wanted to focus on sewing, and I just ignored the filming part of this video. So I actually completed 3 projects that aren't shown in this video at all because I was so busy working on them that I didn't even think about filming them. So I'm sorry about that. I'm feeling much better now, and I've already started filming the next progress log. I think there's going to be a lot more continuity in that video since I've definitely been in a much better mindset while filming it. Another thing that kind of prevented some continuity in this video is that I went away on a trip for a week, and then I got sick for a week, and then I also ended up spraining my left wrist. So there were 2 or 3 weeks there where I was hardcore resting this wrist, icing it every couple of hours and keeping it in a brace and just trying to really baby it. And unfortunately, it's still bothering me, so I might have to get that checked out. But I have been able to be more productive in the past couple of weeks, which I'm really happy about. So with the excuses and the lack of continuity explained, I will talk a little bit about what you'll see in this video. I was primarily working on a robe a la Turk, which I might be making as a sample garment for something exciting coming out next year. I used some really beautiful silks for this dress, and I'm really excited for you guys to see it. I also worked quite a bit on an 1880s bustle dress, which is a period I've never ventured into before, so it might be interesting for you seeing my take on that. And I worked a bit on an Edwardian hat, which kind of ended in failure, and an Edwardian dress, which I actually really like. So I hope you enjoy seeing the progress on all of those projects. And on that note, here it is, and I really hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my very messy sewing room. I'm going to be starting on a new project today, and I have this little thing where I hate starting new projects when there's still clutter out from the previous ones. So I'm going to give this room a big tidy up. It looks slightly better, and I also freed up a bin, so now I have a container to put the project I want to get started on in when I'm not working on it. And now I'm ready for something new. That something new is going to be an 18th century underskirt / petticoat. They were called petticoats, but they were worn over top of other petticoats. So it's basically a visible underskirt for the dress, and it's going to be very simple in design. It's going to have a probably 21-inch wide ruffle across the bottom, and then the top is just going to be smooth and gathered at the waist. So I have this little diagram where I've written the center front, the side front, the side back, and the back, as well as the ruffle width. And now I'm going to go ahead and measure my dress form, or these petticoats on my dress form, and figure out what each of those measurements actually is. So I got all of my measurements worked out and figured out how big all of the pieces I need to cut out need to be. However, it's going to be a little bit trickier than I thought. I'm using a striated, I think that's what it's called, shantung that I got from Fabric Mart, and it's a much prettier color in person. On camera it sort of looks poop colored, but it's a very rich gold with stripes of red going through it and almost a blue sheen. It's gorgeous. However, these stripes run this way down the fabric rather than this way, which means it won't work quite the way I thought it would. So I'm not sure if I have enough, but hopefully it works out and the end result is pretty. I will definitely report back with my end result. So everything has been cut out, and this is what I'm currently working with. This blue piece is going to be the back panel, which is hidden. This is the center front panel, and these 2 pieces are the side panels, and then this is the ruffle across the hem. After getting everything measured and cut out, I turned these pieces into a pattern. And now I'm going to pin stuff together and hopefully get to hemming. I didn't buy specific thread to go with this fabric, so I'm going to have to raid my stash, and hopefully I have some that will work. So this is what I'm currently working with. I got the pieces that will make up the ruffle sewn together, then I turned the bottom edge inward by a 1/2 inch and the top edge inward by a 1/4 inch. And I did this really roughly by eye, but I will be doing the rolled hem more precisely, so I'm going to mark a line 1 inch away from this edge, then fold this up to meet that line and pin it down, and I will repeat the process on the top edge, just with a smaller seam allowance. That'll probably take me a while since this strip of fabric is about 9 yards long, but hopefully I can get it done before lunchtime. Over here I have the upper portion of the skirt. I got this sewn together as well and then hemmed the bottom edge. I have roughly gathered the top edge, but I haven't gathered the center portion, and I haven't gathered the top edge anywhere near the final width that should be. So this is definitely a work in progress, but it does help me visualize things a little bit more. I won't finalize the gather placement until the ruffle is sewn on, so it'll be a while. It's a new day, and my first task for the day is hemming the top and bottom edges of the ruffle. I'm a little bit nervous about doing this because I want it to be perfect. Since this could potentially be a sample garment, that means that people would be examining it, and usually my machine hems aren't that pretty. If I want a hem to look really nice, I'll do it by hand. But I don't want to do this by hand because I know a lot of other people aren't willing to invest that time into making something, so it's more relatable to do it by machine. I'm just not really looking forward to it. So I'm going to have to make a couple bobbins since each edge of this is 9 or 10 yards. Then I'm going to get going and hopefully it'll go well. So I hemmed both edges and it actually went really well. I'm happy with that. And then I went ahead and gathered the ruffle. So I did 2 rows of gathering, one that is 1.25 inches away from the top edge and one that is 1/4 inch below that. And now I'm going to go ahead and sew this onto the upper portion of the skirt. And I haven't purchased it yet, but I will eventually use trim to cover the line that I marked where it's gathered, and also the stitching that actually gathers it, because I don't think that looks particularly nice. And hopefully within an hour or two I will have something that actually looks like an 18th century skirt. So here is what I'm currently working with. I actually really like how it looks. I think the amount of volume is great. I love how nicely this material gathers. It's just been a dream to work with. I did have to drop the ruffle down 1/2 inch in the front area because it was a little bit too short. I want the skirt to be a walking length, which is a little bit shorter in the front than traditional 18th century skirts, but I didn't want it to be that short. So I had to lower that a little bit, but that's an easy change and I left enough room to do it. So the waistline has been gathered and I got the ruffle sewn on, which means the next step is making a waistband and getting that sewn on. I would like to make it out of this fabric and I don't have a whole lot of this fabric left. That's just going to be a rectangle with a couple of hooks and bars on it, but I will definitely update you as it comes along. I'm happy to report that the skirt now has a waistband and I sewed the hooks and bars into it so it actually closes. I haven't tried it on over my stays to make sure that it fits, but it does close, which is good. So yeah, this is what it looks like. I hand stitched the other side just so it looks nice and clean and there isn't any visible top stitching, and I'm really happy with it. So I'm probably going to plop this on my dress form and then call it quits for the afternoon. Good morning, everyone. I don't know if I'm actually allowed to say good morning because it's 11 o'clock, but I slept in a little bit today and then I did 2 loads of laundry and took Gwen for a walk and had breakfast and played a little bit of Halo Reach. I recently got Xbox Gold back and it's been a lot of fun, but not very good for me in terms of productivity. Yesterday I did end up having time to work on this a little bit more, but I decided not to because I think if I do up the side seam, that's going to make it way more difficult to sew on the trim when I eventually do get it. So I'm going to hold off on doing that until after I have the trim and have that sewn on. And in the meantime, I'm going to get started on the garment that will go over top of this, which is called a robe a la Turk. So this is what I'm working with. This fabric will be for the Turk. I have 8 or maybe I even have 10 yards of it, and I purchased it from Fabric Mart when it was on sale for $8 a yard, which is such a good deal for silk of this quality. It has brown stripes and then these burnt orange reddish stripes, and it's just a beautiful fabric and I can't wait to work with it. I think it was advertised as a taffeta, but it feels more like a dupioni. It isn't as stiff and shiny as taffetas usually are, which I'm quite happy about. Then over here I have what I got from Joann's, and I paid $25 for this stuff, which is just ridiculous, but I wanted to get started on this right away, and unfortunately they didn't have any coupons at the time I bought it. I got hooks and bars for the front of it, thread for the assembly and hand sewing, and then I also picked up some embroidery floss in case I have to do eyelets. I got shiny lining for the sleeves because the sleeves are very fitted and will have to go over top of a chemise, and I find that shiny lining makes that happen a whole lot easier and faster. And then I got this for lining the bodice, which I think is really pretty. Probably not worth what I paid for it, but it'll do the job. So yeah, I'm gonna get started on this today. Probably won't get to the point where I'm actually using any of these materials, but hopefully the pattern will come together and I'll update you as it does. And do you know where all of this stuff can go? In the bin that I cleared out the other day. Now isn't that satisfying? So I just did the fitting. The fit was really good across the bust and around the shoulders and at the back. And I'm really happy with the arm sky placement too. The only issue was that the waist was too high in the back, so it gaped a little bit. So I'm going to take it in there as well as at the side seam, and I think that's really going to help improve it. I also have to take a little bit in at the front, and then I drew the placement of the Turk on it. So from here, in that direction, it's going to be made out of the red fabric, and then this front piece will be made out of a contrasting fabric. So I made what are hopefully the right alterations to the pattern, and then I cut it out of a medium weight twill, which will serve as the base for the garment. And I've laid all of those pieces out against my lining, which is this lovely floral cotton that I showed the other day. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these pieces out and then get them sewn together. I think I'm going to put boning in most of the seams just to add a little bit of support to this and help it keep its shape over the stays, but I'm not completely sure, so we'll just sort of have to see how it goes and I'll make it up as I go along. So here's what I'm currently working with. There's been quite a bit of progress. After cutting out the base layer and the lining, I got everything sewn together. Then I top stitched some of the seam allowances down to create boning channels, and I added plastic boning to them. I did a fitting with this before adding the boning, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's a little bit loose at the back of the waist, but I think with the bum pad and petticoats on, it's going to bulk out my waist there a little bit, and it'll actually end up fitting really nicely. So now I moved on to making the front panel of the Turk. This is the only portion of it you're going to see, but I'm going to cut the entire panel out because I think that will make it easier. And this panel is going to have a ruffle on either side of the center front. So I'm going to try and get the ruffles made tonight as well. I'm going to be making them out of this gold fabric. I have a yard of it left that I set aside, and I should only need a few inches of it to create the ruffle, so hopefully I'll have enough left for my sleeves. So I just finished my ruffles, and I think they're very cute. Once again, the color of this fabric is a lot more appealing underneath daylight. My lights in here do not do it justice, but I think they're very cute. I'm worried they're a little too wide, but I don't want them to be any more narrow because I'm planning on putting trim down the center. And I was going to get these sewn on and get the front panel finished tonight, but Gwen has alerted me that she wants to go downstairs, so I think I'm going to humor her and get something to eat and do some editing. That's my plan for the evening, but I will be back tomorrow. So I made some progress on the front panel, which I'll show you in a minute. And I also drafted the skirt portion of the Turk, which is this huge piece of fabric. And I'm trying to cut it out of the silk. I really wanted to cut it on the bias so I could get a chevron pattern in the back, but it's going to be so fabric ineffective if I do it. It's going to take me like 5 yards of fabric just to cut out these two panels. And though I have enough fabric to do that, I don't think that's realistic for other people to do, so I don't want to do it that way. So I'm going to cut this out on the straight grain, and then I should have enough fabric left in this panel to cut out the bodice pieces and the sleeves later on, as well as enough full width to cut out the remaining skirt pieces. I managed to get the Turk cut out, or at least the bodice portions and the back panel, which extends into the skirt, and I got all of it sewn together. I'm pretty happy with it, except it's obviously off when cutting this because this burgundy stripe is wider than this stripe. So the two panels are actually the same width, so I cut it in line with the pattern. It's just the pattern on the fabric isn't symmetrical, which really bugs me, but I don't think is going to be a big issue long term, and I really don't want to waste another 2 yards of fabric, even more than that actually, just to recut this. So I'm going to leave it as it is, even though it pains me. And I'm going to set that aside for a while and work on the front panels, which are currently sewn onto the lining. I sewed them on with the right sides facing each other, so this edge would be finished. And the interior is all nice and finished as well. Now I'm going to sew hooks and eyes onto the lining right. So it's currently 8:30 at night and I just ate dinner, so wearing these stays is quite uncomfortable. But I'm doing a quick fitting with the bodice, and it's a little bit tight, but I'm actually pretty happy with the fit. The only thing I kind of regret doing is making this little peak in the front so low. I feel like it should extend a little bit farther down, but this is also supposed to be from the later end of the 1700s, so it being less exaggerated makes sense. I think the fit is good, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to sewing the red portion on, and I'm going to do that by sewing around this edge, and then just turning it the right way out, and hopefully all will go well, and I will have good news to report back with when I'm done. So it has been a tricky morning. I got these skirt panels cut out for the Turk. I also ripped out some of the stitching in the lining of the Turk and then re-sewed that so it fits a little bit more smoothly over the back, and I'm a lot happier with it. And the next step was attaching and cutting out the skirt. So I got it cut out, and then I tried sewing it onto the existing skirt panel, which is part of the bodice, and it looked terrible. So my second attempt is going to be gathering these panels first, then doing up the skirt seams, then sewing it to the bodice. I'm not sure how well that's going to work, but that's really the only option I see at this point. It's very interesting trying to change something I would usually hand sew and do it with a more machine-heavy method. Using the machine makes it faster, but my mind is a lot slower to figure out how I can do it by machine since it's so different from my normal method. So that's definitely been a challenge with this, but I'm happy with how it's coming out so far, and I'm going to go ahead and gather these panels and hope for the best. So welcome to a new day. Yesterday I got a little bit fed up with the Turk. Though the progress on it was going well, I reached a point where I really needed the trim to continue, and my trim should be arriving in the next couple days. But in the meantime, I decided to start something new, and it's going to be an Edwardian suit. I'm not sure if I'll actually get around to making the suit this week, but I did think I could start on the hat. I really like having hats in progress because they're easy to work on in front of the TV, they don't take too long, and they're exciting to see come together since they have a more defined form than a costume does. So I've started off by making this oval shape and then this rectangle and sewing wire into both edges, and then I lined it with this suiting. Now I'm going to cover it with batting to create a dome top and to round off this edge, and then I'm going to cover it in this beautiful beige wool that I have. This is the beautiful wool that I mentioned, and then this is going to be the fabric for the suit. The batting is on, so now the corners are all nice and rounded and the top is slightly domed. I'm a little bit worried about how large this hat is. Though it's supposed to be oversized and that it sits on top of the hairstyle rather than on the head, I think it's like ridiculously large, and it's only going to get bigger after I add the brim. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed it's all going to work out and will look okay proportionally with the outfit. But right now I'm a little skeptical of the size, and unfortunately it's kind of too late to change that without disassembling it. So I finished the base of the hat, and it's comically large on me. It looks ridiculous, but I'm really hoping I can save it with some trims. I'm planning on adding a purple band around here, as well as some flowers and a bow, which will hopefully make it have more texture and depth and make it look less out of place on my head. That's fun. I just realized there's a pin in there that I've sewn inside of the brim. Okay, so task number 1 is going to be getting that out of there. And then I'm going to add the band of ribbon around it and the flowers and everything and hopefully salvage this massive hat. I also want to dye all of this trim. I'm going to try just tea staining it, which isn't going to work very well since it's a metallic trim, but I think it's just as likely to work as using RIT dye or anything like that. I did a little sample yesterday and I feel like it made it slightly brassier, very slightly. I don't know, do you see a difference between those two? I kind of do, it's definitely subtle. I was hoping to get it more of this color, which is kind of a deeper, brassier gold, but I don't think that's going to happen. However, maybe if I put more tea in it and leave it for longer, I will have better results, and this will match my Robe a la Turk a little bit better, because right now this is just a little bit too yellow. Speaking of yellow, look at that lighting. It's not going to go right against this fabric, but they are going to be in the same costume, and I don't love how they look together. So I'm really hoping that a bit, or a lot of tea rather, will help change this a little bit and make it blend in a bit better. Good morning, everyone. So it's a new day. I'm sorry I haven't been filming very much. I haven't been especially focused or productive, but I'm determined to change that today because I finally have all the trim for my Robe a la Turk, which means I can really pick up the progress on that and try and get it finished. But I started off this morning by cutting, oh god, probably 400 yards of lace. I bought a bunch of lace in Lancaster, which I'm selling in 24, 30, and 50 yard lots. So I've just been cutting 15-yard lengths of this. Now I have to wrap all of these up individually and tie little bows so they're ready to be shipped. I don't actually have my bags for shipping yet, but I want to try and get as much of this done as possible so I can get orders out quickly if they do sell. Hopefully I'm not being too optimistic and that they actually will sell, so I'm not left with a bunch of 15-yard bundles of trim. I definitely need to clean my sewing room because it's kind of a mess right now, but yesterday I picked up the sewing machine. Ta-da! Isn't she beautiful? I'm so in love with it and I'm so excited to have it. I really went back and forth about buying it. It was an eBay pickup only thing and I wasn't sure if it was going to work and I wasn't sure if it was going to be sketchy. I also wasn't sure if $45 was really a good deal for it since there were some selling for that with the table included, but they were non-functional and this was supposed to be functional, so I decided to go for it and I'm so glad I did. I think it's just beautiful from a visual perspective and it is actually functional. It'll sew through 10 layers of thick suiting, which my current industrial machine can't do at all. Granted, I do have an industrial machine made for lighter weight fabric, so it really isn't supposed to be able to do that, but this is definitely a far tougher machine than the one I currently own. So I think it's a good addition to my little collection, and I'm actually going to get a decent amount of use out of it, as well as a lot of happiness from just gazing at it because it's so pretty. From what I can tell, this is a model 1530, and the neat thing about it is that instead of having a shuttle like a lot of older machines, it has a vertical bobbin right here and threads up the side. So the vertical bobbin and bobbin casing is almost identical to my current industrial machine. It just threads from the side, whereas my industrial machine threads from the front. So it's actually the same sort of mechanism and everything. It's just on the side of the machine instead of the front like it is on this one. The color is called Tiffany Gingerbread. It actually has a really low model number. I don't know if you can see, but it's 13,761, and I think more than 1 million of these machines were made, so that's kind of cool. This was advertised and I originally thought it was a machine from the 1940s or 50s, but apparently this detailed design was only on older machines, which means it's probably from 1910 and was converted to electric. So I have a little light here and I also have the motor here, and it does have a pedal. It does work. I oiled and cleaned it yesterday and then did a little test run. Even though it is functional, it's very noisy, so I'm a little worried there might be something wrong with it internally, and I'm going to look into getting it properly serviced. I'm going to gaze at this while I continue winding trim, and then I'm going to get to work on the rope a la Turk. Hello everyone! So it's been about a month since I've filmed anything for this video, and in that time frame, this room has once again become a disaster. So I thought I would film cleaning it up. Like, look at this, it's just such a mess. And then I'm going to update you on what I'm working on and what I want to work on, as well as some stuff that I got from Joann's, which is hiding out over there. So I'm just going to film this. Hopefully you guys like watching speed cleanings, and if you don't, then you can skip the next minute or so of this video, because that's what I'm going to be up to. So this is the after. It doesn't look hugely better, but there's definitely a difference, and I got some stuff underneath put away, so as I progress on the project, you see there and there, I'll have a place to put it, and stuff shouldn't build up as much as it was before. Unfortunately, I can't get rid of those 2 bins or organize the things in them just yet, because they are things I'm going to mention in a video that I have to film soon, and the same for those frames. But what I'm going to talk to you about now is this stuff, so I can put it away. Hopefully you guys can hear me and see what I'm doing. I think you can. I'm just going to take you through the fabric I got today and what I plan on doing with it, since you might see some of these projects begin to take form at the end of this video, depending on how long it already is. So I saw a 1950s dress on Instagram that I really liked, but unfortunately it would not fit me. So I picked up some lace that I could use to make something similar when I was in Lancaster. Then today at Joann's I just got 2 fabrics to go with it, so I can actually get started on that. I think I got 5 yards of the tulle and I had a coupon, so it was $4, and then this was reduced from $10 to $6, and then I had 25% off everything. For an Edwardian project that I already have the base fabrics for, I decided to get some chiffon and some matching mesh. These don't perfectly match the other dress fabrics I have, but I think they will be close enough, and since they're kind of sheer, I can fudge it.
I got 3 yards of the chiffon and 4 yards of the netting. I think that's going to be plenty and leave me with enough left over to use it for something else, which is great. I picked up some base fabric. This is just a medium weight twill, which I like using as a foundation for corsets and fitted bodices and everything like that. However, this is slightly stretchy, so I kind of goofed up there, but I think as long as I pay attention to the grain line when I use it, I'll be able to get away with it. The other broadcloths reduced from $5.99 to $1.99, and then again I had my 25% off coupon. So I picked up 8.5 yards of this white cotton, and I think I'm going to use this for an 1880s petticoat or an 18th century petticoat to help make the hoops in my bustle or panier a little bit less obvious underneath skirts. The last fabric I bought is from the Platitudes collection, which if you've been following me for a while, you will know I love. When I saw this, I just couldn't resist it. I had a coupon for it, so it ended up being around $20 for the cut. It's a very small check pattern with red and gold threads, and then there are colorful little threads that look almost like pilling on it. And I just thought it was a really neat texture and would be really fun to make something out of, so I decided to get that. I've been planning to make a full costume for a while and I have all the fabric for it, but I wanted to get a trim to sort of tie all the materials together. I picked up 5 yards and this was regularly priced at $4.99, but I had a 60% off coupon, so it ended up being $10 for the lot, and you can't complain about that. Last up are some notions. I got some blue ribbon to go with the other blue fabrics for the 1950s inspired dress. Then I got 2 zippers to go with some fabrics I picked up in Lancaster. I got embroidery floss to go with a silk I'm using for a 1630s dress. And embroidery floss to go with the folk costume for the vest. And then I just got some hooks and bars. I got 2 in size 1 and 1 in size 0. It's kind of rare for them to have these in stock, so I figured I would just grab them while I saw them and had the coupon for them. I'm pretty happy with what I got. I think I got the finishing materials and notions that I need for 7 costumes / dresses, which is pretty good, along with a couple other materials that I just thought were really nice, as well as some basics that I'm definitely going to use at some point. So all in all, a successful trip, and now I'm very excited to get started on some new stuff. So we'll talk about that in a minute.
Hello everyone, so it's been another couple days. I think in the last clip I said I was going to decide between 3 projects, a folk costume, an Edwardian dress, and something else. But I ended up going in a completely different direction since those ideas were going to take more time and research than I was willing to commit to. I also wanted to make a summary piece before fall because I have so many ideas for fall that I'm excited about. But I know as soon as I get to those, I'm going to regret not taking advantage of the greenery that's still present outside. So I decided to combine 2 fabrics I bought in Lancaster, which is this emerald green cotton homespun, and then a gingham fabric that I got from Fabric Mart. It is an 1880s style bustle dress, so it is worn with a lobster tail bustle, which I will have a video either up already about or up soon, because I did film the process of making it. I've never made a piece from this period, so I'm excited with how quickly I've gotten this together, because I've only worked on it for 2 days, including the drafting. I do feel like it looks a little bit plain, so I might end up adding more trim to it, like right there, or even something around the hem just to give it a little bit more oomph. So today I'm going to focus on assembling the back half or getting part of the assembly done, and hopefully then I'll have more of an idea of how it will look finished and can move on to adding more trims, or at least sort of deciding if I need to add more trims. I already have the pattern for the back figured out, which is here. Unfortunately, this is going to be quite complicated. There are 3 tiers made out of cotton, and then 2 of those tiers have ruffle and lace overlays, and then one of those tiers also has a pleated overlay, which is going to be the same effect as this. I have already completed one of the ruffles, but I still have 2 more to make, one of which is going to be made out of velvet, which is what I used for piping there. And velvet is notoriously hard to work with. I'll turn this around a second so you can see what the back looks like now. So before the day is done, I should have that more filled in and get more of an idea of the shape this will soon have. And this is the ruffle that I made last night. I also got the other ruffle cut out, then I also got the pleated panel cut out. I'd like to get that done early today so I don't have to worry about it later. Or if it ends up really hurting my neck, I can kind of work slowly on it throughout the day and I won't have 3 hours of pleating looming over me. I feel like in every progress vlog I also mention what music I'm listening to, and this is today's jam. So I got everything pleated and it took me forever. It was just a lot of work, and it is painful work, just the way you have to be leaned over to do it and all the lines that have to be drawn. But luckily it is done and there's no more pleating on this project. However, I am trying to figure out how to trim the pleats. I really like to incorporate this lace into the back somehow, and I think this is the only place I can put it. I'm also motivated to do this because I messed up and there's a Sharpie mark here that the lace would help cover. There also isn't a lot of other places I can put the lace, so this might end up being my only option, but I don't know how much I like it being there. And I'm also not sure if I should turn these pleats like I did on the front of the skirt, or if it doesn't need that if I'm doing the lace. So I'm just sort of torn about what textures I want in the back of the skirt, so I'm going to play around for a little bit, and then I will end up showing you what I choose to go with. So it's been another day because my mom has been cleaning and switching around the rooms upstairs, and I'm a little bit self-conscious standing in my room talking to myself when I know other people can hear me talking to myself. So I didn't update you guys, but I'm going to do that now. So I went ahead and made the dagged ruffle out of the gingham, and this was actually surprisingly easy to do. I was sort of dreading it, but I cut out the 2 strips of fabric, and then I made a pattern out of watercolor paper, so it's a little bit thicker than normal paper, and I just went around this with a marker and traced the design onto the back side of one of the layers. Then I pinned the layers together, sewed around the outline, and then trimmed the excess material away. When I turned them the right way out, they weren't turning out all the way. There was sort of a pucker right here. So I actually went in with a seam ripper and just removed the stitch that was causing that to happen. It isn't an ideal solution. The alternative would be clipping further into this corner, which can cause the fabric to fray over time, and I didn't want that to happen either. So for now, I'm pleased with this solution, even if it isn't the most durable long term. Then I went ahead and gathered that strip down and sewed it onto my green ruffle, which I showed you guys in the last clip. And then underneath that is the base layer made out of green flannel, and on this base layer I've marked the line where the velvet ruffle will go. I'd originally planned on doing the velvet ruffle before sewing on these 2 layers, but I was getting kind of impatient and wanted to see a bit of progress, so I went ahead and did this. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew the next base tier on, which I have right here. Then after this is sewn on, I'm going to sew the ruffle onto this. And by ruffle I mean this big piece of fabric, which is a gathered strip of cotton with some lace sewn on, and then some scallop lace hand stitched around that. Then underneath that is the pleated layer. The pleats were tacked down by machine at this point, and then I covered up the stitching with more scallop trim, and I sewed on 2 rows facing each other so it forms this little chain stitch looking thing. I like what I chose to do with this trim. I don't like how this lace ruffle looks. I don't know if cutting it down so it's shorter would make it look better. It just seems awfully bulky, so I'm hoping once it's all sewn together, I will like how it looks. I don't really want to take it off because I used the same lace on the front of the dress, and I feel like this kind of ties it together, but it's also not my favorite part of the costume, so we'll see what I end up doing with that. I am also debating about adding dag trim to the bottom of this. Once again, I think I'm going to figure that out once I'm a little bit farther along and have this gathered the way I want it. I did originally plan on putting dag trim there, but I couldn't get it to look quite right because I hadn't figured out this method for making it look really sharp. So yeah, we'll see what I end up doing there. But for now, I'm going to focus on these panels and get them sewn together, and then I will show you what that looks like. I just pinned that on, and I'm actually really pretty happy with how it looks. Keep in mind that nothing is perfectly in place yet. This is obviously going to attach to another panel, and then there will be fabric draped down that covers parts of this. I'm also going to be gathering or pleating this portion significantly and potentially adding the dagged edge there as well. So I still have ways to go, but that looks better than I thought it would, and I'm not as bothered by the lace ruffles I thought I would be. The only thing that bugs me is how little volume there is right here, which is because of the way my petticoat is made. It's not made for this particular period. So I think I might take some petticoat netting if I have some around and put it underneath that layer and hopefully give that a little bit of oomph. There's also going to be a velvet ruffle along the bottom just to add a bit more volume to it. So this is what we are currently working with. I think it's turning out pretty well. I cut the top panel out of flannel and got that sewn on. And then I also completed the ruffle and sewed that on. It's made out of this maroon velvet, which I used for piping over here. I cut out a couple of rectangles and rounded the hem so it would gradually get longer towards the center. And then I hemmed it by hand because it's really difficult to hem velvet by machine. It's really difficult to sew velvet by machine, period. So I just wanted to avoid it as much as possible. I whip stitched it together last night when I was watching American Ninja Warrior. I've decided that I want to add dagging to this front edge as well. So I think I'm going to get that sewn on, then figure out what the pleating there is going to look like. And I might even be able to do up the side seams tonight, which would be fabulous, because as soon as the side seams are done up, I feel like I can take this off the dress form and potentially work on my 18th century thing and get that finished really quickly before coming back to this. Alright, so here's what we are dealing with. I got this panel repleated, and then I transferred the pleating pattern to the other side and trimmed the edges, and then I sewed it onto the front panel and sewed the front and the back panels together. And I'm really happy with how it looks. Unfortunately, I couldn't end up doing French seam side seams since the fabric was so thick. So that's unfortunate. And this seam really didn't end up being the most even. There are parts of it that are like 1 inch wide and parts that are 2.5 inches wide because I didn't fully trim down the fabric before doing it. So that isn't ideal, but I think it looks really good. And I'm kind of kicking myself because I just went to get the materials for the bodice and I realized I didn't really consider how much material I would need to do this draped portion, and I don't actually have that much of the green left. I think I have 1.5 yards, so that'll definitely be enough to do the bodice, and hopefully I'll have a little bit left over for that panel, but not nearly as much as I probably should. I may end up having to do this portion almost entirely out of the pinstripe fabric as well as the velvet, and maybe add a few tiers of lace in there to break it up. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be an adventure. Hello everyone. So it's once again been a little while since I filmed anything. These last few months have not been very creatively positive for me. I've been working. I just haven't been very excited about my project, which makes it difficult to have the enthusiasm to write and post and film those projects. So I'm sorry for how scattered this vlog has been. I promise the next one is going to be a lot better. I definitely feel like this week has been a lot better for me, and I'm hoping that is the sign that things are going to pick up as the weather gets cooler and my excitement towards stuff is going to resume. But if you're wondering why this particular video seems a little bit off, I think it's because I've been kind of off creatively, which has just caused me to forget to film and not feel motivated enough to film. But once again, I'm going to catch you up on what I've been doing and hopefully finish off this video this week, as well as finishing off 2 projects and potentially planning a new one. What I've been working on in the last week while I haven't been filming is this Edwardian dress. And this is late Edwardian, so I would say 1918. It has a very slim fitting hobble skirt made out of draped velvet. And I love the color of this velvet. It's a really rich green, and it's a stretch velvet, so it's been very easy to fit and drape. The bodice has a boned base made out of silk satin, and then I used the scallop lace to trim it. The overlay is made out of chiffon and netting, and it has more of the scalloped lace. And then I did some beadwork around the neckline and around the hems of the sleeves, and I repeated that beadwork on a lace band that goes around the waistline. The back closes with eyelets, and I did a fitting yesterday and it went really well, so I can officially add the snap closure on the skirt as well as the hook closure on the bodice, because the lace of the waistband does overlap onto the other side, so I'm going to put 2 hooks or 2 snaps there. I haven't decided which. And I want to make a really big structured bow for the back of this dress out of some of the velvet I've left over, so I'd like to get that done today as well. I also want to finally get my 18th century dress done and shipped out. I did the finishing work on the bodice, so it's completely done aside from sleeves. So if I can get the sleeves drafted and a mock-up of them made today, I would be absolutely thrilled. So this is attempt number 1 for the sleeves. I'm not feeling too confident about this. There was quite a bit of guesswork involved since I'm terrible at sleeves, and I find these curved 18th century sleeves especially difficult since everything has to line up perfectly and it has to be very fitted to look good, but it can't be too fitted because then you don't have enough mobility. When I made a robe a la Turk last time, I used a pattern from one of Nora Waugh's books and it was amazing. I had to make a few alterations, but those sleeves looked so fitted and so good. The only downside was that there wasn't a lot of mobility, but obviously this needs to be original, so I can't use anyone else's patterns. So I'm figuring it out on my own, and hopefully I will come up with something that looks just as good, but offers a little bit more mobility, because that was one thing that her pattern was seriously lacking. So this is attempt number 1, and it's far from perfect, but the shape of it is actually pretty good. I just have to do some fitting and add more room to the top of the sleeve and the underarm and widen that a little bit. It's obviously slipping down here quite a lot since I'm not holding it and it isn't pinned to anything, but I promise it does look better when it's pulled up properly. Attempt number 2 went so much better. The sleeves are a little bit big, but I think that's good because it means you have more mobility in them, and it's really, really easy to take sleeves in if you want, whereas it's a little bit more difficult to take them out. To let them out. You don't want to take the sleeves out of the garment. That would be not what you're going for. This was much more successful. I had to raise this side slightly, but other than that, I think it's good. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer attempt number 2 to like nicer paper and add seam allowances and everything. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut them out. So I got the base of the sleeves pretty much done. I cut them out for the top layer fabric, which unfortunately I didn't have enough of to cut them out on the same grain line. So the under panels are cut horizontally and then the top panels are cut vertically. And ideally they both would have been cut vertically. I think cutting this on a different grain line actually screwed something up because they ended up being a lot bigger than I thought they would be. And unfortunately it's really difficult to take them in after the lining is done, and when I fitted the lining they felt quite tight. So I'm not really sure what happened, but they look good enough, and I still think it's good to veer on the side of caution, have them be a little bit bigger. And then over here I have the over sleeves. This is identical to the tops of the sleeve pattern for the under sleeves. I just added a 1/4 inch on either side for a little bit of ease, and I also cut it to be much shorter and removed the center seam. Since it sits quite high on the shoulder, it doesn't need that center seam for shaping down the elbow and everything. So now these have been cut out of the burgundy fabric, and I also pinned some of the lace on. This is the lace that was originally a very yellowy gold, but I painted, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm going to sew this on, and then I'm also going to sew some fringe onto the bottom and some sequins. So it will end up matching the detailing on the bodice right here. And this detailing actually extends all the way around the skirt. I'm not sure how much of this project I've actually shown you. I know I've mentioned it a couple times, but I can't remember where I left off. Because I know I forgot to film the painting of this lace, and I probably neglected to film some of the other steps too, since that has been my theme for this month. But this is what it looks like so far. It looks much prettier on, and if I have some by the time this video goes up, I will include a worn picture here. So my goal for today is to get the sleeves done, to get all of the trim and sequins sewn on, and hopefully I can also get them sewn onto the dress. I'd really like to photograph it on Tuesday and then get it shipped off on Wednesday. So that is my current plan, but I will definitely update you with how that goes. So it's later in the day now and I'm back to work. I got the lace sewn on to the over sleeves, and now I have to do the sequin detailing and sew on the fringe. This is actually trim made for lampshades. It was from a home decor Etsy seller, but it was really reasonably priced, and I love how the brown and gold goes with the burgundy and the silk. So I was really happy to find that, and it was very reasonably priced. So I will be sewing that on, but first I'm going to sew on the sequins. And my sequin mat is currently being taken up by things I was using for the Edwardian project. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of these away, and then I can get these stitched on. So the sequins are on, and I'm really happy with how these look, but I just did a fitting with them over top of these sleeves, and they're too big. I'm not happy with how these sleeves fit, especially in the upper arm. So I think I'm going to rip out the top stitching around the sleeve head and try and take the seam in by a 1/4 inch or so, and hopefully that will resolve the issue and not take me too long and not bugger up the silk too much, because that's one of my major concerns with doing fit alterations to silk, is that it can be a delicate fabric and it can be difficult to make those alterations without the exterior showing signs of them. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new day. I ended up quitting relatively early last night. I mean, it was around 8, but I'd planned to work until later. Just because I got so fed up and frustrated with the sleeves, but I've managed to resolve all of those problems. However, I did procrastinate quite a bit of the morning away since I wasn't looking forward to doing this, but luckily it's done. So I've got the tops of the sleeves completely finished. I added the fringe to the bottom, and I think they look really, really pretty. I also made the necessary alterations on the sleeves. So I ended up shortening them by a 1/2 inch, and then I also ended up taking this in by a 1/4 inch, and I actually let it out a little bit right here, so there's more room in the shoulder, but it fits tighter around the arm. So now I'm going to sew the over sleeves onto this and then bind the top edge, and I can sew them onto the bodice. It's done! Finished up the bodice. All I ended up doing was adding a brooch because I thought the bow looked too large and kind of distracted from some of the other details. And then I just finished doing up the back seam here, and the underskirt and the dress are completely finished. I might end up making a headpiece to go with this eventually, but for now it is done. And I'm so happy and relieved. I think it turned out really well, and when I was working on this at a relatively steady pace, I did enjoy the process. I just took so many breaks that it ended up becoming kind of overwhelming, so it ended up taking a lot longer than it should have. But I really like how it turned out, and I'm so excited to wear this for a little bit and then get it sent off. I think I'm going to try and keep the momentum going and finish off this dress. I can't remember what I said about it, but I have to cut the hem and then actually hem it, and I have to sew a snap into the back and then make a large bow to go with it. I just looked it over and I'm actually going to use a hook to close the skirt. I'm going to put the hook here and put the bar here, and that will kind of drape the back closed. Then I'm going to use 2 of these tiny snaps to secure the lace over top of the lacing. I'm probably going to put it on my dress form or actually try it on so I can cut the hem the way it's meant to be. I just finished cutting the hem for the Edwardian dress, and then I turned it inward by 3/4 of an inch. Stretch velvet doesn't fray, but it does get bulky very quickly, so I thought just turning it in once and leaving that edge raw was a better option than turning it in twice and having the hem look a little bit clunky. The hem itself is very weird since it isn't straight. There are like right angles within the hem, which makes you think it won't look level when it's worn, but since it's so strangely draped around the waistline, it ends up being level. It's very odd and different from the hems that I'm used to working on, but it is finished and it looks pretty nice from the exterior. So now this dress just needs a big bow, but that'll have to wait a little while. I have a call in 2 minutes. I'm really anxious about it. I hate taking phone calls, but I don't know, part of being self-employed, I guess. So that's what I'm going to spend my next hour doing, and I will try and report back later tonight or early tomorrow and get this dress done. Alright, so it is the next day. I ended up having my call last night, and then I spent the evening researching it and trying to switch my domain over on WordPress, which took forever and didn't end up working. And then I spent the first 2 hours of this morning doing some designs for that potential commission project, as well as finding fabric swatches and sending them over an estimate. So that's what I've been up to, but now it is time to make the massive bow. That is the only goal that I have for today, and I am determined to accomplish it. So I've already measured stuff out, and I think I want it to be 19 inches wide or 18 inches wide once it's finished, since it needs to be a truly massive bow. So that means that I'm going to cut out a piece that is twice that length and probably, 20 inches high. Then because this is stretch velvet and I want the bow to be relatively firm and hold its shape, I'm going to back that rectangle with interfacing. And then once that is done, I can figure out how long the tails should be. I just sewed in a little muslin modesty panel since I'm not sure when I'm going to get the slip that goes underneath this done. I have a feeling it'll probably be a month or 2 with how busy October is going to be. I also sewed in a bar for the bow, and I finished the bow. Isn't it glorious? It's huge and it looks pretty much exactly how I wanted it to. I decided not to add tails. I like how it looks just on its own. I think it's almost more dramatic. The back is left unfinished since I just whip stitched it together as opposed to seaming it, and there's a hook there that secures it to the back of the bodice when it's worn. I'm probably going to need some help getting this bow on and off, but that's okay. But other than that, I can get into this dress really easily, which I like. Here it is from the front, though hopefully I will have some much nicer photos of this costume to share by the time this video goes up. With these few steps done, this dress is completely finished and ready to be photographed and worn, which I'm very excited about. And I think this is the note I'm going to choose to end this video on, because when I checked last night, I had about 3 hours of footage to go through. So I think I filmed enough, though it has taken me several months to get that amount of footage, and I'm going to cut to the outro and go over everything that I accomplished this month.
So that is it for the video. I apologize once again for the lack of continuity between clips. There were just so many gaps where I wasn't filming for one reason or another, and instead of leaving in the 2-minute explanations between each one for why I hadn't filmed in a while, I figured I would just throw them all out there and hopefully you guys can make sense of it. I am quite happy with the projects I completed over the past few months. There were a couple pieces you didn't see, like my Rapunzel inspired 1830s dress, which I absolutely love. I made this mid-September in 3 days and I could not be happier with the end result. I think it's so pretty. I also made a pair of brocade pink stays during the duration of this video, which didn't get mentioned at all. And that was a lot of fun. They came together really quickly and I really like the shape of them. So I'm wearing those underneath the robe a la Turk that you see throughout this video. I also attempted to make a 17th century dress. I got the bodice drafted and the base complete, but when I tried sewing the top layer fabric to the base, it all just ended in disaster. I couldn't turn things out the proper way and I ended up giving up. I still have the pattern and I'm really happy with that pattern, so I'm definitely going to resume progress on it at some point, but that ate up a week of time that I wasn't filming. So with the off-screen projects explained, I want to talk about the couple things you did see. I'm really thrilled with how the robe a la Turk came out. This is probably one of my favorite color palettes and fabric combinations that I've ever worked with. I just think it's beautiful. I'm quite sad that I didn't enjoy the process of making it as much as I should have. I do a lot better when I work on a project over a series of 2 weeks and don't take any large breaks from it. If I take large breaks, I tend to procrastinate a lot more, and instead of working through problems that costumes have, I'll just start on new things. And that ends up being really destructive, and that really limits my productivity on that specific piece. And that was something I was really guilty of with this design. So I'm quite annoyed with myself for that. However, I think the end result is quite beautiful, and I can't wait to share the pictures of it worn and the thing it will be turned into and released as next September. Another thing I worked on is a hat, and this was significantly less successful. It's just way too big. Luckily, I should be able to salvage the wool that I used on it for a new, smaller hat, but I have to completely remake it. It was just a disaster, and I did not take nearly enough time to drape it and figure out the dimensions that would work best for it. So that's kind of a bummer and a waste of time, but it is what it is. Another thing that started out as a time waster is the bustle dress, and I'm actually quite happy with how this was coming along. It came together way faster than I thought it would, especially considering how much work each tier of it was. I'm really pleased with how much progress they made over the course of the week. However, before I could finish it or come anywhere near finishing it, I had the deadline for the Robe a la Turk to worry about, and the leaves also started changing, so you can kind of see a little bit of green behind me, but they're mostly orange now. So I realized that I wouldn't have a chance to finish it and photograph it before autumn completely took over, so I decided to set it aside, and sometime in the winter when I need a little bit of spring brought into my life, I'm going to try and get that finished up, or I might even leave it until next summer. However, I do plan on completing it. I spent so much time on it and I love the color, and I do want to finish it. It just isn't what I'm excited about right now. And the final project is the green Edwardian dress. I'm quite pleased with this as well. It's really different from anything that I've made before, and it came together quite quickly. I'm not thrilled with how the bodice overlay fits. I wanted the sleeves to be a lot wider and shorter and to have little undersleeves poking through, but I didn't have enough lace to do that, and I screwed up the patterning in a way where it just wasn't possible. So that's kind of disappointing, but I am still happy with it, and I think I'm going to take what I learned from that piece and use it on another dress with a similar bodice design, but a slightly different skirt. Speaking of the skirt, I've never made a skirt that fitted and draped and bizarre. As much as I love it, unfortunately the velvet shows up really poorly on the black backdrop that I currently have for taking photos, and I got my hair cut and it ended up a lot shorter than I thought it would be, so it's going to be a challenge to do any Edwardian hair with this right now, so it might be a little while before I've worn photos of that, but I do plan on getting them at some point in the near future. This is also the video where I got my new sewing machine, which I still love and have behind me. I have tried doing a few little samples with it, but I haven't used it for a garment just yet. And I bought my 18th century shoes, which I'm so excited about. They will be making an appearance with a couple costumes in the next progress vlog, so definitely subscribe if you're interested and stick around for that. So I think that covers everything. Thank you so much for watching. As always, there will be a ton more information in the description box down below, so you should check that out. And if you're interested in seeing the next video in this series, then you should subscribe, because there will be one coming in the next couple of weeks. Thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you very soon.